liberté, égalité, fraternité, et laïcité? You are definitely aware of the first three words that I mentioned, the ones that make up the national motto of the Republic of France. However, you may be wondering what the final word was. What was it? Laïcité. Before this, though, let me introduce myself. I am Tate Birchfield, Senior Policy Advisor for the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and I will be talking to you today about a course of action necessary for NATO, which I believe is more than necessary for the protection of liberty and Western democracy. Laïcité is a concept which exemplifies French secularism, a policy or state of being set up by the French government in the early 1900s to ensure the separation of church and state. In a similar way to the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment here in the United States, laïcité bars the French government from observing or giving deference to a specific religion. This comes after a long history of French republicanism being antagonistic to the Catholic dominance that existed prior to the French Revolution and maintained dominance through much of the 19th century. One can recognize laïcité in the extremely secular language used by the French government and their hesitance to recognize any religion. But you are much more likely to see it in action at public schools, beaches, or other parts of the public sphere. This is because the most controversial part of laïcité is its restrictions on personal expression in public spaces. Infamously, in 2016 and throughout the 21st century, continuing now, France has banned burqas, abayas, niqabas, and other Muslim attire from public spaces in the name of laïcité. Even at the beach, a citizen is not allowed to wear a garment affiliated with a religion, like a burkini. Such banning on religious attire would not be problematic if not for its ties to anti-Muslim and Islamophobic sentiments. France has the largest Muslim population in Europe, a result of many North Africans immigrating to the country in the last few years. French nationals have complained about these processes and their fears of being replaced by the waves of new North African Muslims. Unrest has been bubbling in France's Muslim community for some time, particularly in response to laïcité and relating mistreatment of citizens by the government and other citizens. Laïcité is not predicted to soften in the immediate future and will continue to operate in the way that it is currently. Religious attire will continue to be banned in the name of public neutrality, and new citizens and their descendants will continue to feel isolated. If anything, it is more likely that Muslim unrest will continue to grow in future alongside the movement of France to the far right politically. Alongside this, it is unlikely that France will utilize laïcité equitably against all religions, specifically Catholics and other Christian denominations. I am also confident to report that it is unlikely that France will cease its laïcité regulation. Noting this all, it is necessary for NATO to advise France in order to help diminish unrest building in their country between ethnic and religious groups. NATO, as an intergovernmental organization, cannot place its own forces in France without a physical conflict occurring. But the nations making up this intergovernmental organization can suggest certain activities for the government of France to attempt. 1. France should soften its stance on laïcité to allow religious attire in some public settings. This important distinction allows laïcité to remain and protect the establishment of a civic religion. However, it admits to the improper nature or unfounded concern created about religious attire's presence in places such as beaches or schools. This softening will allow for better relationships to form between Muslims and non-Muslims and will aid integration into society. Integration need not mean fully absolving one of a citizen's personal identifications or parts that are true to their human expression. 2. France can introduce greater deterrence for anti-Muslim hate in an attempt to remain faithful to their use of laïcité. This is a solution offered in a realist mode in order to keep French officials happy. Still, the solution brings about the question of financing for added police presence or increased jail capacity. It is smart to evaluate deterrence in a different light, perhaps through communication and advertisements, which specifically communicate to citizens the negatives and absurdities of sectarian or religious fighting. Third, I recommend NATO potentially persuade the French government to implement an education program in its public schools, which works alongside Laïcité to inform students about the benefits of religious plurality, not necessarily in the public sphere, but its place in society at large. Through this, a slow move away from a divisive relationship can occur between Muslims and non-Muslims in the country. This policy recommendation too will incur funds, which may suggest the potential of NATO to provide some funds to the country to kickstart the program. This policy recommendation would additionally be the slowest to ultimately implement and gain efficacy because of the maturation rate of children and the generation it takes to halt a process or develop change. I hope, though, through this and what I have presented today, the esteemed members of NATO have a better view of laïcité and the current state of affairs in France,